After Dad abandoned me, I became the rich kid's favorite. My father sent my sister to an exclusive private school, then turned around and dumped me with a bunch of trust fund kids to be their housekeeper. I spent my days walking on eggshells. The short-tempered son knocked over the food I made, and the rebellious daughter threw my books away when she caught me studying in secret. My sister came to visit, gloating. Same womb, different fates. How could you ever compare? I just chewed and swallowed the piece of lobster in my mouth and smiled without a word. Yeah, how could I compare? The young master was cooking for me, and the princess was helping me cram for the SATs. How did I end up being their favorite? My mom passed away, and my grandma fell gravely ill. My dad, as my legal guardian, had no choice but to bring me back to the city from the countryside. My sister and I are twins. One looks like Dad, the other like Mom. After the divorce, my dad couldn't stand the sight of my face. I looked too much like my mother. He never once came back to see me. It was pouring rain on the drive back. My sister sat next to Dad in her delicate princess dress. I sat in the back, wearing cloth shoes caked with mud and carrying my school bag, watching their touching father-daughter moment. Just as I was starting to imagine how I would get along with them, the car pulled up in front of a modern villa. What teenage girl doesn't dream of being a princess? I stared at my dad, stunned. I had no idea his business had gotten this big in just a few years. Get out. My dad's voice was cold. Before I could even process it, my sister had linked her arm through his. She turned back to me with a sly look. This is where you'll be staying, little sister. Confused, I followed them inside. The moment we were through the door, my dad's demeanor switched to one of fawning subservience. A group of teenage boys and girls were sitting on a rug in the middle of the living room, playing a board game. Young masters, young ladies, this is my niece from back home. She's here to be your live-in housekeeper. His words hit me, and my eyes instantly welled up. Niece. Worker. The blood rushed through my veins. This man, the father I had missed day and night back in the country, suddenly seemed terrifyingly cold. I watched as my dad and sister walked right past me without a single glance. My sister's heels clicked on the floor as she leaned in close, her voice dripping with mockery. Work hard, little sister. And be careful. This family is not to be messed with. I stood frozen in the living room. Just like that, my princess dream shattered. A new identity awaited me. Live-in housekeeper. I rubbed my eyes with my sleeve, wiping away the tears before they could fall. At least I have a place to stay. After Mom died, I lived alone in the countryside. Drunks would often pound on my door late at night, harassing me. This place at least seemed quiet. But the crystal chandelier hanging above me was magnificent, and a delicate spiral staircase stood before me. I was completely out of place, standing there awkwardly. A girl with pink hair noticed me. The new housekeeper? I met her gaze and nodded. Pick any room on the first floor. They're all empty. Get settled in before you come out to work. I nodded, picked up my backpack and headed in. As I turned the corner, a male voice called out from behind me. Take a shower and change before you come out. Don't get the carpet dirty. Even with my back to them, my face burned with shame. After I quickly washed up, I received a transfer from my dad for $1,000. Your wages. You'll get this every month. Spend it wisely. Even through the screen, I understood what he meant. Spend it wisely meant don't ever ask him for more money. Only a brother and sister were left in the living room, both sitting on the couch, staring at their phones. Their expressions were terrifyingly dark. The next second, the girl grabbed a pillow and hurled it at the boy. They started wrestling, looking like they did this all the time. Jade, you suck at this game. Ethan, don't mess up my hair. I'm your sister. What's wrong with me seeing your cards? To hell with you being my sister. Don't you know the rule? At the card table, there's no family. I stood off to the side, not sure if I should intervene. An innocent pillow, thrown back and forth, ended up hitting an innocent me. My stomach rumbled and I fainted. I hadn't eaten all day. I was starving. When I opened my eyes again, I was lying on the couch with two pairs of wide eyes staring down at me. Bro, she's awake. Thank God, we're not going to jail. They exchanged a look, and suddenly Jade started pressing all over my body, from my scalp to the soles of my feet. I'm incredibly ticklish, so all I could do was awkwardly stifle my laughter. No abnormalities, bro. She held her breath well. Good lung capacity. With that, they both let out a long sigh of relief. Hey, housekeeper, what's your name? Chloe. Chloe, like a budding flower? Jade got a light smack on the head for that. So uncultured. It's from a poem. Subtle words the world doesn't hear. Early grain greets the beautiful colors. Ethan finished with a raised eyebrow, his eyes full of smugness. Jade grumbled, so what if you've read a few more books? I silently repeated the line of poetry to myself. No one had mentioned my name's origin since my mom passed away. Seeing that I was fine, the two of them went back to their phones. Chloe, we ordered takeout, so don't worry about us. I was really hungry, so I headed to the kitchen by myself. I'd brought 2 bags of wild greens I'd picked in the mountains, hoping to let my dad and sister try them. The kitchen was so clean it looked like it had never been used. The fridge was filled with nothing but drinks. I took out the greens from my bag, stir-fried them, and threw in a handful of ramen noodles. It was enough to fill my stomach. I was enjoying my meal when Jade came to the dining table with bags and bags of takeout. She pointed at my food and shrieked, "What is that you're eating?" The young miss had probably never seen such poverty before. She covered her mouth with both hands in shock. Ethan rushed over, and with a sweep of his arm, knocked my bowl of food to the floor. Luckily, I reacted fast and bit off the noodle in my mouth, or I would have gone flying with the bowl. Ethan glared at me, his face full of anger. Eating this kind of stuff in our house? Are you trying to insult us? An enraged Ethan, a shocked Jade, a shattered bowl, and a very hungry me. In that moment, I finally understood what my sister had meant. This family is not to be messed with. Jade pulled a burger, fries, and a large ice-cold Coke from the takeout bags. Ethan stared at me hard, as if giving an order. Eat. I opened my mouth and started chewing. Oh my God, I was so hungry. After I finished the feast, the siblings watched me until I went back to my room. I cautiously wished them both good night and closed the door. Before I even reached my bed, I heard them scheming loudly just outside. The room had excellent soundproofing, but I could just make out them saying things like she's in for it, and we have to teach her a lesson. Right? We can't let her get away with this. Time to turn up the heat. I hid behind the door, trembling. The days ahead were going to be miserable. That night was, in fact, miserable. For a stomach used to simple, light food, fried food and ice-cold Coke were torture. I ran to the bathroom 4 times that night. Sitting on the toilet, completely drained, I found myself really missing my wild greens. Ethan, a night owl, was in the living room playing video games. He witnessed my pathetic state firsthand. The moment I got back to my room to rest, the siblings kicked my door open. "You. Move into that suite over there." They looked ferocious. Ethan grabbed me by the back of my collar while Jade carried my backpack. They marched me straight into a large room with its own private bathroom and walk-in closet. The reason? The sound of my toilet flushing was so loud it was keeping Ethan from getting an MVP in his game. So unfair. But the bed was huge and soft, and I passed out immediately. After that experience, I became even more cautious around the siblings. But things started developing in a strange direction. At night, I would hide under the covers to do my homework. Jade would find me and throw my books and pens away. Her reason was that the light from my flashlight, after reflecting off 17 different surfaces, was disturbing her beauty sleep upstairs. I was clumsily trying to mow the lawn in the garden with a lawnmower. Ethan came out and took the wheels right off it. He claimed the noise was so loud it had scared his hamster to death. But the vet had clearly said the hamster died from overeating. My wild greens never appeared on the dinner table again. Instead, I became Jade's personal leftover disposal unit. She'd push anything she couldn't finish into my bowl. But why was it always things like caviar, lobster bisque, and truffle risotto? It was like a 10-course gourmet meal every night. After a week of this, my life successfully transitioned from washing, cooking, and feeding hamsters to eating, studying, and being a gaming buddy. Of course, the studying involved Jade's endless supply of SAT prep books and her one-on-one tutors. The gaming involved Ethan's expensive consoles, and occasionally, I'd have to be Jade's makeup model. This life was actually kind of nice. The good life was making my cheeks rosy. When my sister came to visit, Jade was in the middle of practicing her makeup skills on me. The two siblings always sounded like they were fighting. Jade was yelling for Ethan to bring her the fine-tipped liner brush. Ethan, while rummaging through a pile of brushes, asked if he should just grab the deboning knife from the kitchen. That was the scene my sister walked in on. Jade had my chin in her hand. Ethan stood beside her with a furious look on his face, and he was holding a kitchen knife. Chloe. My sister thought I was being horribly abused by the siblings. Though she tried to hide it, the upward curve of her lips betrayed her delight. She opened the bag she was carrying. One was full of old clothes, the other with expired instant food. Chloe, I brought these for you. It's all stuff you never got to have in the countryside. I prepared this especially for you. I glanced at the bags, wondering where she'd dug up all this trash. The next second, Jade kicked one of the bags away, not holding back at all. What is this garbage? Hey, she said what I was thinking. My sister looked mortified, but our father had warned her 1,000 times. The He siblings were the children of a powerful executive. They had to be pleased. My sister forced a smile. Jade, I was just worried my sister wasn't doing well, so I came to see her. Don't misunderstand. Our family isn't rich. To my sister, these are really good things. My sister had always been a master at playing innocent. Jade shot her a look. Is that so? Then I guess the Chanel on your back and the Mio Mio in your hair were stolen? My sister's mouth twitched, but she bit her tongue. Ethan put down his phone and walked over, seemingly to play peacemaker. Seeing Ethan approach, my sister immediately started batting her eyelashes, tears welling up. Ethan crouched down to look at her, his voice impatient. Jade, how could you say that? They're all last season's styles. Not worth much anyway. Oh, by the way, Chloe's sister, that hair clip, it's a fake. Ethan's takedown left me speechless. My sister completely lost it. She grabbed me and dragged me back to my room. As we turned the corner, I tugged on her sleeve. Stella, I don't live in the housekeeper's room. I live over there. When she saw the room I was staying in, her acting skills kicked into overdrive. Well, Chloe, Dad sent you here to build character. But all you do is find ways to seduce people, getting these two to stick up for you. No wonder Dad always said you were trash, just like Mom. I sat on the edge of the bed as my sister poked my forehead with her finger, hard. It hurt. Hearing her mention Mom, I grabbed her wrist. You even remember Mom? Stella, aren't you disgusting? Where were you when Mom wanted to see you the most? My sister looked down at me haughty. That woman was not my mother. Wasn't it embarrassing enough what she did? I looked at my sister coldly, this twin who had once shared a heartbeat with me. Now, she had become the person I despised most. Mom was the victim. It was just an ordinary day. After lulling her two daughters to sleep for their afternoon nap, she put on a traditional dress she hadn't worn in years. She was the one who was assaulted, and she was the one who was shamed by everyone. Her husband chose to divorce her. Even her own daughter refused to go back and see her. The criminal walked free. My father was bought off by the perpetrator, getting a promotion and a raise, while my mother's world became an endless abyss. She was tormented until the very end of her short life. I stood up, grabbed my sister by the collar, and slammed her against the wall. In the years we were apart, she had sent me things a few times. A worn-out doll, a half-used notebook, a yellow dress. I used to think she missed me, that she was thinking of me just as I was of her. Today, those two bags of trash finally made me see the truth. I was nothing more than her personal garbage dump. The family bond one had cherished turned to dust in that moment. I used all my strength to choke her. My sister whimpered and struggled. Ethan burst in and put an end to the drama. I looked at my sister, gasping for air on the floor, and this time, all I felt for her was hatred. You just wait. I'll have Dad deal with you. I calmly straightened my clothes and went back to my desk. The He siblings stood on either side of me like guards. Why are you guys so nice to me? I finally asked the question that had been bothering me for days. Jade always said she was just making me finish her leftovers, but the food she handed me was always a freshly served portion. Ethan always called me dumb when I played games with him, but he would still patiently teach me. They both had sharp tongues, but their actions were always so soft-hearted. Jade scratched her head. Because I'm a good person. Ethan tapped her on the head. Chloe, we're not saviors. Let's just say we clicked. And you're not like us. I think you deserve to have your own life. I imagine you don't want to be a housekeeper for the rest of your life, do you? I didn't quite understand what Ethan meant, but the very next morning, Jade dragged me to school. Let's go, my little study buddy. From today on, you're coming to school with me. Jade tilted my chin up, looking ecstatic. I was in the same class as Jade. She dropped her backpack and ran off. The young miss has to go learn her arts and crafts. You stay here and pay attention in class. My desk mate was a boy who looked very quiet. He wore black, half-rimmed glasses and a neat, clean school uniform. Hi, I'm Leo. I nodded. Chloe. It had been a long time since I'd been to school, and I was behind on a lot of subjects. Studying on my own at night was just a drop in the bucket. The teachers here were excellent. I listened with my full attention, not wanting to miss a second. During the break, I worked on practice problems. The material here was much harder than what I was used to. I stared at one problem for a long time, completely stuck. Leo noticed my struggle and took my workbook. This one you can. His explanation was clear and simple, and I couldn't help but feel a sense of admiration for him. Chloe, what are you doing here? It was my sister's voice. She was holding a cake, dressed up and looking nothing like a high school student. That's when I realized this was the exclusive private school my sister attended. The spot my dad had begged and pleaded to get. But for Ethan, it had been a single phone call. I finally understood the kind of power the He family had. Stella was here for my desk mate, Leo. She placed the cake on his desk, her voice syrupy sweet. Leo, this is for you. Let's walk home together after school. Then she turned to me, her voice a low hiss. Let's talk outside. She dragged me into the hallway. A few other girls, dressed in a similar style, were waiting there. Chloe, how did you get in here? Did you sell yourself, or did you sleep with Ethan? Aren't you shameless? Seducing Leo the moment you arrive. Hearing this, her little friends became righteously indignant. They looked like they wanted to eat me alive. Stella, who is this? She looks so innocent, but she's actually a total slut. She even dared to go after Ethan? Has she looked in a mirror? As they talked, Stella got even more worked up. She raised her hand to slap me. I shot my hand up and twisted her arm behind her back. Sister, did you really think I wouldn't fight back? Stella's friends saw what was happening and took a few steps back. Pathetic. And here I was, ready to take on all three of them. Stella struggled to break free, but she was so pampered she was no match for my strength. Plus, with all the gourmet soup Jade had been feeding me lately, I felt like I had a ton of energy to burn. Seeing that I wouldn't budge, Stella started screaming. Chloe, this is a school, not some backwater hellhole you crawled out of. If you don't let me go, I'll have the dean expel you. The more she yelled, the tighter I squeezed. For the first time, I realized that once you let go of family ties, revenge feels amazing. Stella kept screaming, and she finally attracted someone's attention. Who's looking for the dean? I'll call him for you. Too bad for her. The person who showed up was Jade. Jade had just finished her piano practice and was passing by when she heard the commotion. The second she saw me tangled up with Stella, she blew a fuse. Stella, you don't kick the dog when the owner's around. Who gave you permission to bully Chloe? Jade, with her fiery temper, rolled up her sleeves, ready to jump in. Stella shrieked, who's bullying who? Her friends chimed in, claiming I had started it by insulting them. Jade just scoffed. I'm not Judge Bao. All I saw was you touching Chloe's hair. More like Judge Dredd. Seeing Jade lose her temper, Stella's friends scattered immediately. That left the three of us in a standoff in the hallway. Mainly because I had Stella's arm. Jade was stepping on her foot, and Stella couldn't get away. It was almost time for class, and more people were walking by. Everyone was whispering as they saw Stella's disheveled state. Stella's face was beet red with shame. And in the end, she begged Jade for mercy. Jade and I walked back to class, shoulder to shoulder. Thanks, Jade. Jade rubbed her nose. It's nothing. By the way, what I said back there about the dog, that's not what I meant. Seeing her looking embarrassed, I laughed. I know. You meant that I'm your good friend, and they can't bully me. Jade gave a haughty nod. My dear Mississippi Jade, you're so good to me. How could I not understand the hidden meaning behind your tough words? It was only after coming to school that I realized Jade and Ethan weren't just rich kids who partied all the time. Their schedules were more packed than the dean's. Jade was an art student, spending her days either painting or practicing piano. Ethan was even more intense. Not only was he first in his class academically, but he was also constantly participating in various competitions. Compared to them, I was the one with the most free time. All I had to do was attend my classes and stay up late catching up on everything I'd missed. It was simple and fulfilling. Except for Stella, who would come by every day to chat with Leo, bringing him homemade cookies or asking for help with the first big problem on the homework just to look cute. After being put in her place by Jade, she didn't dare to confront me openly anymore. But I felt her revenge in other ways. For 2 months, my dad didn't send me a single penny. But I didn't care. The He siblings gave me way too much. Life continued on its steady course. I did well on the midterms, scoring just 20 points below Ethan, and ranking in the top 20 of our year. I was very happy with my results. Leo looked at my report card and gave me a thumbs up. Chloe, you're smart and you work so hard. I really admire you. Leo invited me to study together after school. I agreed. After school, I sent a message to Jade saying I'd be home late. She didn't reply, so I put my phone away and went to study with Leo. What I didn't expect was that the study spot was Leo's house. My mom just hired a new tutor for me. He's a student from the UCLA math department. He's really good. After the tutor's lesson, Leo and I continued to study on our own. He explained that so well. I said, organizing my notes. Leo smiled. Then you can come over more often. Chloe, if you want, I could ask my mom to sponsor you to study abroad with me. Leo looked at me with a smile, but for some reason, a chill ran down my spine. If you're with me, you won't have to suffer. I need a helper who's as smart as you are. I shook my head and started packing my bag. No, thank you. The doorknob turned, but it wouldn't open. Leo had locked the door from the inside. Chloe, you're not one of them. You're not like Ethan and Jade. I know who you are. You're Stella's sister. Wouldn't it be better to be with me? You should hate people like Ethan and Jade the most, shouldn't you? It's because of them that I have to live in the shadows as an illegitimate son. You're the same, aren't you? Stella is your father's precious pearl. I felt a cold dread wash over me. All his seemingly friendly help, all those cold glares he always gave Jade. It was all because he was the family's secret son. Leo hated Jade and Ethan. In his eyes, they were thorns in his side, people who had stolen his life. But what had Ethan said that day? He told me Leo was a good student with a calm personality, and that being his deskmate would help me learn a lot. I spoke coldly, but Leo, they've never seen you as a rival. Leo sneered. Of course, because they look down on me. In their eyes, we're just dogs. Chloe, aren't you the same? You're their housekeeper, Jade's study buddy, following her around like a little maid all day. I shook my head. No, that's not true. Jade was bossy and arrogant, but when I had no money, she went to her dad just to make sure my $1,000 a month salary was deposited into my account. Ethan was cold and quiet, but when he saw me doing chores while trying to finish my homework late at night, he went out and bought a bunch of smart home appliances the very next day. They occasionally called me little housekeeper, but they usually called me Chloe. They respected my work, but they also quietly protected my dignity. So how could I ever think they looked down on me? Someone started pounding on the door. Stella's voice rang out from the other side. Leo, I'm here to do homework with you. The door opened. When Stella saw it was me, her face changed instantly. Behind her stood a beautiful young woman, who must have been Leo's mother. Leo, is this your new deskmate with the good grades? Leo's mother looked at me with a friendly expression, but her eyes were full of scrutiny. Leo nodded and turned back to his homework. Stella brushed past me, bumping me hard, and whispered in my ear, "You're such a slut." I ignored her, said goodbye to his mother, and left with my backpack. "I'm leaving, ma'am." As I went downstairs, I was surprised to see my father. He was sitting on the sofa, holding a teacup. He looked shocked to see me. "Chloe, what are you doing here? Shouldn't you be at the He house serving those two at this hour?" "Serving?" What a word. All he could think about was using me to curry favor with Ethan and Jade, hoping they'd put in a good word for him with their father. He knew he couldn't get close to Ethan, so he shifted his target to Leo, a talented and obedient illegitimate son who, even if he didn't inherit the family business, would still hold some power one day. And Stella was just another pawn in his game to get closer to the He family. A deeply selfish man who would abandon his wife for profit and sell out his own daughters for personal gain. It was only now that I truly saw him for what he was. The father who had once seemed so godlike and great in my eyes was just one of the worst men in the world. Leo's mother came up from behind me. Chloe? Mr. Song, so this is your daughter too. Your daughter is very impressive. Leo tells me Chloe's grades are excellent. And she seems to have a good relationship with Ethan and Jade. Her tone was full of meaning. Hearing this, my father's eyebrows shot up. Chloe, you've been studying hard lately. Come home for dinner tonight. I shook my head, ignoring his voice. Stella came down the stairs, her voice whiny. Daddy, you promised we'd have dinner with Leo tonight. I walked out the front door and looked back at Stella. My eyes held a hint of pity. Sister, are you happy being offered up to Leo's mother as a gift? I hurried back to the He's, with only Ethan's words echoing in my head. We're good to you because we think you deserve a bigger world. When I got home, Jade was lying on the sofa scrolling through her phone. Ethan was busy tinkering with his drone. They both looked up at me at the same time and said in unison, "You're back." Jade pointed to the dining table, meaning she'd saved me some dinner. A message from Leo popped up on my phone. Chloe, think about it. We're the same kind of people. I turned off my screen. For some reason, my eyes started to sting. Ethan, Jade, why are you so good to me? They looked at each other, their eyes filled with panic. Who bullied you? Jade jumped up from the sofa, ready to fight on my behalf. I couldn't help but smile, a tear falling to the corner of my mouth, tasting salty. They took me up to the rooftop for a barbecue. The summer night breeze felt warm on my face. Chloe, do you envy my life and Jade's? I nodded, then shook my head. For me, meeting the two of them was the luckiest thing that had ever happened to me. To envy anything more would be shameless. Ethan continued, Jade and I never had to worry about food or clothes growing up. Everyone treated us with respect because of our father's position. We have to admit, we've enjoyed this privileged life. But because of it, we also have to bear certain responsibilities. I have to study business and take over my father's company. And Jade has to master the arts to become a proper socialite. Our lives are happier than most, but our choices are also more limited than most. Ethan grilled 2 ears of corn, which Jade immediately snatched. She chomped on one and handed the other to me. Jade stared at me. Chloe, do you remember? The day you first arrived, you brought a handful of wild greens, still smelling of the earth. You were afraid we'd look down on you, so you hid in a corner to eat by yourself. At that moment, I thought, this girl is so cute and so pitiful. I blinked. But I didn't do anything, and you were still so nice to me. Jade punched me lightly. Of course you did. The first day you were here, you cleaned the shoes I left by the door. When I practiced makeup on you, I always made you look ridiculous, but you never complained. The clothes I'd just toss on the floor, you'd always quietly wash them by hand for me. But you shouldn't be living a life like that. Jade grinned at me. Chloe, just think of it as meeting your saviors. You're not our little housekeeper. You're our little favorite. Ethan also gave a rare smile. Chloe, we just have a lot more money than you. I'm willing to be the wind beneath your wings. So you have to fly as high as you possibly can. After the midterms, the school held a parent-teacher conference. Here, the main topics of conversation were whose family drove the fanciest car, and whose parents carried the most expensive bags. None of that mattered to me. I found an empty classroom to study in. I didn't want to waste a single moment. While everyone else was excited about having the afternoon off from classes for the conference, I sat quietly at a desk, working through problems. Chloe, your father is here. My homeroom teacher had to search several classrooms to find me. When I got back to the classroom, my father was standing at the front, sharing his parenting wisdom as the father of a top student. I have always taken my children's education very seriously. You have to teach according to their abilities. And more than academics, I value their character. He went on, a middle-aged man with a mediocre career finally finding his moment to shine. I stood at the door, watching his performance, a wave of nausea rising in my throat. My homeroom teacher patted my shoulder, signaling that it was my turn to go up. My father stepped down from the stage and affectionately patted my head. He looked every bit the perfect father, but it just made me sick. I walked up to the podium and looked out at the audience. Hello everyone, my name is Chloe. This is my father, a man who abandoned his wife for a promotion. Of course, he also abandoned me. For the past 7 years, he never asked about me once. But today, because I've achieved some success in my studies, he suddenly remembered he has a daughter. He's not a good father, but he's definitely a good employee. Because he's willing to drive his own wife to madness for his job. And he's willing to send his own daughter to someone else's house to work as a housekeeper for his job. A wave of murmurs swept through the parents below. Their eyes darted back and forth between us. I looked at my father standing beside the stage and couldn't help but laugh. He rushed forward and yanked me off the stage. His movements were rough, his eyes filled with rage. A complete reversal of the loving father-daughter act from moments before. He dragged me out of the classroom and raised his hand to slap me. Too bad for him. I was no longer the little girl who worshipped her dad. I raised my arm and blocked the impending slap. What's wrong, Dad? You want to discipline me here at school, too? A crowd was gathering around us. He stood with his hands on his hips, glaring at me. Chloe, you've got some powerful friends now, haven't you? Your wings have gotten strong. Hearing this, I couldn't help but laugh. I shot back, Dad. Aren't you the one trying to climb the social ladder? Weren't you the one who offered your older daughter to Leo like a child bride, teaching her all those tricks to please men every day? Weren't you the one who sent me to the He family as a housekeeper to sell a sob story? Back when Mom and I were living in the countryside, unable to even sleep at night, did you ever answer a single one of my calls? My words left him speechless. Because of the crowd, he didn't try to hit me again. Stella pushed through the people. The whispering stopped, and everyone watched us. Chloe, do you have a conscience? Throwing a tantrum with Dad at school? Can you just stop? She played the peacemaker, holding my arm with one hand and Dad's with the other. I sneered. Stop being so stupid, Stella. Do you really think Dad loves you? Looking at her foolishness, I didn't even want to explain it to her. We were sisters. How could she be that clueless? She knew she was just a pawn for our father. But for a pathetic scrap of dignity and fatherly love, she endured it. I pulled my arm away from her, walked through the crowd, and went downstairs. At the bottom of the stairwell, Ethan and Jade were leaning against the wall, arms crossed, watching the show. I felt a little embarrassed that they had seen the whole thing. Jade pinched my cheek and marveled, "Wow, Chloe. You've got guts," saying all that at a parent-teacher conference. Ethan patted my shoulder. Our Chloe, her wings really are strong now. And strong wings are what you need to fly higher. For some reason, seeing the two of them made all my defenses crumble. We went home together. I didn't see my father or Stella again until after the SATs. Ethan mentioned once that word of the parent-teacher conference had gotten back to my father's company. A father figure that selfish was deemed unfit to be a shareholder in the He Corporation. His plan had failed, so he pinned all his hopes on Stella. After that, Stella didn't come to school much. Her dad was always taking her to various parties to meet all sorts of rich heirs. I no longer cared about anything they did. Hearing about it didn't stir any emotion in me at all. My life became stable and full, filled with studying, Ethan and Jade. The entire month after the SATs was the best time of our lives. Ethan got early admission to UCLA, Jade was accepted into an art school abroad, and based on my practice scores, I felt like I did well. We spent that time completely carefree. Later, I got my acceptance letter from Columbia University, just as I'd hoped. 3 people in 3 different cities. But on the day we parted, there was no sadness. Ethan took me to the station. "Chloe, remember that I'm your founding investor." I grinned at him. "I'll remember. Thank you, Ethan. I promise this stock won't disappoint you." Ethan waved his hand. "I'm not looking for a return on investment. I just want all your dreams to come true." I went through the gate and waved to him. After getting on the train, I received a voice message from Jade. She sent a few touristy photos from overseas. I played the message. She was as stubborn as ever. Chloe, you must miss me a lot. But it's okay. The next time we meet, we'll be adults. I typed back a few words. Yes, Jade, I miss you. I miss you a lot. She replied with a selfie of her blowing a kiss. For 4 years of college, I worked part-time while I studied. Ethan sent me money every month like clockwork, and Jade often sent me packages from abroad, cosmetics, clothes, you name it. Their actions made me work even harder. Those two stubborn people always spoke louder with their deeds than their words. 4 years later, I was accepted to study abroad on a government scholarship. Coincidentally, the university was in the same city where Jade was studying. But the day I arrived was the same day she was flying back home after graduation. We had a brief, hurried meeting at the airport. Jade hugged me, her eyes filled with tears. And just like that, another 2 years passed. When I returned to the country, I was a tech consultant for a drone company. The first time I saw Ethan after coming back was at a business dinner. He had taken over the He Group and expanded its business empire, one part of which was drones. He sat across from me in a tailored suit, but all I could think of was how he used to stay up late, taking apart a single drone and putting it back together, over and over. He studied business to inherit the family company, but in the end he managed to ride the drone wave on his own terms. And after 6 years, I had finally made something of myself, able to offer a small return on the kindness they had shown me for no reason at all. After the dinner, everyone else left. Ethan looked at me. Dr. Song, long time no see. I nodded. Long time no see. Ethan took me to see Jade's art exhibition. The girl who once scribbled on my face now had her paintings hanging on a gallery wall, admired by thousands. Jade. Jade turned around at the sound of her name, and her eyes reddened the moment she saw me. Chloe, you missed me. We went back to the old house. The three of us sat on the terrace and raised our glasses in a toast. A toast to Ethan, for taking over the family business and still embracing his dream. A toast to Jade, for resisting an arranged marriage and becoming a dedicated artist. And a toast to me, for being abandoned and then lifted up to become myself. The end.